That's most beneficial. And as you said, once you can see the improvement in the patients after they remove these little critters, that's
Yes,
proof
but
positive.
of course they're going to grow back.
Uh-huh.
You get an improvement for the time being, but they're going to grow back because you don't know what they are and you don't know what they require. And they're written in my last book already. Those things that parasites or bacteria, but let's say parasites, require. They are, of course, living in us because we are providing them the food they require. Something we never thought of so carefully in the past. We thought that they're living in us because they're getting food, shelter, and clothing. But that isn't it. That's not all they need. That's not all we need. We need vitamins. We need specific food factors. And without them, we cannot manage. We can't manage without vitamin E. We wouldn't be reproducing. And they're in a similar situation. They need certain things, just like, say, the cabbage butterfly needs cabbage plants to grow its larvae on. If there are no cabbage plants, you have stopped the whole reproduction of cabbage butterflies.
Yep.
Yes, and the larvae and the destruction that they bring to your garden.
Yeah.
We only need to learn what the specific requirement is for these different parasites, and step number one is learning what we have.
And hence you can eliminate them if you starve them out.
Yes, yes,
by
that
not
is another
providing
thing
them
that just happened
chromium or whatever they might need.
by accident, right? It's a deduction that just fortunately turned out to be true, but some are much harder to starve out than others, because in reality they need something like a vitamin.
Or a mineral.
Yes, they need something organic that they're getting from us, a fat or anything, and we don't know what it is.
In many cases, but in some cases we do, like the Ascaris and mammalian, primarily. Isn't there a requirement of mammalian products for Ascaris to survive?
For one of the two, we have two varieties of Ascaris very commonly. In fact, we have them both as a rule. They just have their turf divided, so that in one area you might have one, Ascaris megalocephala, and in another area you might have the other one, Ascaris lumbricoides. And Ascaris lumbricoides needs something entirely different from the other Ascaris. Ascaris lumbricoides requires the squash family. So you see, that's much more difficult to avoid than just a squash.
Exactly.
You have to avoid a certain chemical, which is what they need to maybe go through one of their molds. They have a simple life cycle.
Would that be gallic acid?
It's quercetin.
Quercetin.
I think it's quercetin. But of course we need many other parasitologists in order to learn more and verify what we all are finding. We need lots of parasitologists, neighborhood, community parasitologists, who
amateur
look at
parasitologists.
things, amateur parasitologists.
Who can get into it and go through the order of things and
who
not
can be real helpers and have real experience.
And not be put off by the whole subject.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's like a public health nurse, except that you don't have to be a nurse to look at something and identify it.
Right.
You just need experience and knowledge and desire to help your neighbor, your neighborhood.
And yourself.
And yourself.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Maybe that's first.
That's first.
Because if you're not alive, you can't pass it on.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. If you were to find, for instance, that in your neighborhood, and we have found a number of these neighborhoods where there is a high percentage of autism or a high percentage of Down syndrome, you might find that there's a high percentage of a parasite.
And a substance in that food cycle that's supporting that parasite.
That's exactly right.
And or a radioactivity in that area that supports the whole thing.
And there's more than one thing that goes in
Come on in.
Make way for the...
Make way for the subject here.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
No big problem like autism or muscular dystrophy is due to a single thing. Even if it did involve a gene or a food factor or a toxin or a parasite, they work together. It isn't just due to one entity, and we have to learn that's the importance of a community helper.
That makes this all happen?
Yes, there are different things that have to be met, and look how useful that is. If all you have to do to get immediate relief is to remove one, but that's not going to solve the whole problem, because if people need, say, 4 or 5 things to have an autistic child, then you need to go after those 4 or 5 things, all of them, because in one child or one person you have the missing factor or the factor that's most is hardest to get, right? Might be mercury.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as there is mercury there, then everything else is in place already, and you will have an autistic
you have a
child.
completed equation for the problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
most interesting.
and I think that a parent or a community worker who wants to get into this new health saving approach. They have the patience and the foresight to see that the environment is supplying all of these bad things, not just one thing. It's supplying the parasite, it's supplying the toxin, it's supplying the history of the child or the victim. And they, I think, have an understanding of environmental illness that many people who aren't real sufferers can't get. So I think that community health approach would be the most efficient in order to start to control and stem this big new development where you have so many chemicals coming from industry and so much pressure of animal life, so many pets, so much animal refuse, so much lack of cleanliness in the home and on your property, and lay people have a good understanding of that, much more than professional people might. So I think that a community health approach is just the right thing to start to shrink this burgeoning illness. I don't know what to call it other than an illness, but
pandemic.
It's environmental, part environment, part parasitic, part toxicity, namely industrial, all of it together. And I think that we can put our fingers on it. We can, well, we don't have to literally put our fingers on it, but we need to understand the
entire phenomenon.
The entire phenomenon, how they interact.
Exactly.
And then have practical knowledge of what to do about it.
And how that affects the human system.
Yes.